Hey everybody, David Lowry with Club Fantasci, and I'm here with Matt and Jenifer Wehner, and we are talking about Infusion, the game. Brand new on Kickstarter, been out a few days, and this has a little bit of a twist to it in the sense that you're trying to bring the past and the present together. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So in terms of the past, we're utilizing characters from classic literary stories. So the fairy tales that everyone's grown up with and that have existed for centuries. And then in terms of the future, we've brought all those characters into a sci-fi universe. So there's space travel, there's virtual reality, there's all sorts of great things like that.
And how did you come up with this particular concept?
It was kind of a work in progress. We knew we had some core concepts for a game that we wanted to create, and we were kind of just spitballing a lot of different ideas. We wanted a backstory. We wanted a strong theme, something that people could kind of really get wrapped up in. We knew we wanted to focus on like a hero design, something that you could personalize specifically to the player. And so we had just kind of started spitballing ideas. And I think the one that kind of, the seed that sort of planted everything to start growing was we were looking at one point at doing like a Sherlock Holmes in like a post-apocalyptic universe. And we were kind of thinking about this concept and how interesting that might be, what kind of ideas we could come up with there. And from there, we were kind of like, that universe has kind of been done before. You know, it's almost been done to death at this point. We still love that universe, but we thought, well, let's think about a different form of mashup. What else what has really not been done before? What is really kind of unique and something that we can really personalize and really style? And we said, well, what if instead of just one literary character with kind of a somewhat broad universe, what if we took a bunch of literary characters and put them into an even broader, large-scale universe?
I mean, fairy tales and classic literary stories are just part of who we are, especially those of us who grew up with kind of like Disney stories. But I mean, even as late as college, I was taking a course on Russian fairy tales. So I love fairy tales in general.
Well, how long have you been working on this particular game?
Quite a while. We've been avid gamers for it's been too long to keep track of, but we've always been, focused on, well, what would we like to see, what would we like better, and when we first, like I said, started kind of coming up with the theme, we already had a general idea of where we wanted to go with it. So the answer to that is definitely quite a long time.
What was the process for you starting out? Did you actually sit down and write out cards yourself? How did you do it? What was your impetus for making this happen?
Well, we kind of started more with the story that, okay, well, which characters do we definitely want to see, and which game mechanics do we definitely want to see in style, and then match them up to something that would make sense. And where we saw that there was gaps either in game mechanics or story, then we looked to see who or what would fit in with that.
Have you found this to be a good marriage building exercise?
In one of the social media outlets a couple months ago, I think it was me, I made a post and said that, I'm really excited to launch the campaign. I'm really excited to get it out there. But at the same time, I'm really excited to get it behind us so we can start, we've done some kind of pre-development work on expansions and we have ideas, but I'm excited to get back and start designing again, because it was such a fun experience for her and I to be able to sit down and just spend, hours and hours kind of just working out story elements and then coming back and try to utilize them within the game itself.
And I would say it actually strengthened our marriage as well, because we worked so much as a team and addressing what strengths one person has or the other person has and going, hey, I really can't do this, or you're much better at this. What do you think? But you have to sit there and listen to the other person as well, which is, core concept of marriage, listening to the other person communicate and just appreciate for that and having very, I would say, in-depth conversations. But yeah, working together a lot definitely helps the marriage.
We've been gaming together for at least 6 years now. mostly just, socially with friends. But back in 2013, we picked up the Star Wars LCG game from Fantasy Flight. Mm-hmm. And we both started playing that very competitively. We've gone to their world event each year, Gen Con every year. We're very, very active in that. So that was kind of our main bridge, I guess, between marriage and into very competitive gaming, very focused gaming.
Now that you guys have put this together and you spent all this time on this, which characters in your game do you most identify with?
Oh, that's a very great question. I really like Talia. She's our Sleeping Beauty character, and she doesn't always have to act every turn. She can sit out a turn and kind of wait and see where things are going. And I identify with that a lot, that I'm not always like, oh, I have to go and rush and do things, but I sit, I wait, I build up my resources, and then I act.
You're a watcher.
Yes.
It's actually a great question. There's 12 characters in the game, and we definitely, I wouldn't say we put ourselves directly into them. The real big goal of the characters was to personalize the experience for the players. We play quite a bit of deck builders, countless really to me. And one thing that we always feel is lacking from them is some form of like excitedness to sit down and play the game your way. Yes. So many of the deck builders start where everybody's on the same exact playing field. And that's neat and that's fun, and it's nice to start off even. But sometimes it's so much of the game then becomes focused on what cards came out, what cards are available for everybody, and those kind of define the game. And we wanted, before the game even started, to be defined. I've referred to it before. I'll refer to it again, that I played a lot of Monopoly when I was younger. That was like a big family game for us. And, there was always the one piece that you wanted to be. And with Infusion, we really wanted to say, well, yeah, maybe you want to be the race car, but what if the race car actually mattered? What if it actually did something during the course of the game? So for me, the character, I guess, that I guess we designed most with me in mind in terms of play style is probably our oracles, which is our three blind mice. They're futuristic future seers. That's kind of a weird statement. But they have an ability that lets them every turn effectively discard 2 cards and draw 3 new ones. And so I like a lot of that deck manipulation and card advantage.
But you can see that in a bunch of our heroes as well, that the people that we play with have definitely been influencing on the heroes themselves. They're like, oh, I remember so-and-so likes to play this way, so what if we were to create a character that looks so that they could enjoy that type of mechanic?
Yeah, like I think every gaming group has, a stereotype of card player with them, that this person likes to play this way, this person likes to play that way. And with 12 heroes, I think we really try to incorporate a lot of those different styles.
I'm going to assume that the title Infusion is a play on the fact that you're bringing these different worlds together, and that's what that really stands for.
It's a double play. It plays on that as well as also with the concept of building a deck as well. You're kind of infusing your deck as you go and adding new elements and making it your own thing.
So what made you decide to go the deck builder route versus another route?
Sure. Deck builders are our group's kind of easiest to sit down and start. And they're rather quick. We kind of tend to prefer 30 to 45-minute rounds. It lets us get in more new games each time. But we've talked to enough people now that, we like the concept of taking the world we've created and applying it to other genres of gaming as well. And I think that's something we're definitely looking at for the future now. But deck building is kind of where our heart is, so to speak.
All right, so how many deck building games do you own?
Just if I turn the camera, you would see, I think, 6. And this is on our dining room table in our formal dining room. The big ones are like Ascension, Dominion, Legendary. Let me see what else is over here. We play several different versions of Legendary. We're big fans of Upper Deck's design there. I think it's a lot of fun.
What got you guys started in gaming?
We've actually both played just casually gaming for years. Both Matt and I have grandparents that like to play cards. So I'll let him talk about his grandparents. But for me, I went to my grandmother's growing up as a kid, and we'd sit around and play something as simple as Go Fish or Book, which is very similar to Go Fish. You make 4 of a kind. And then did swim team and dance. And you wouldn't think those would go in with gaming, but you would have a lot of downtime. So you'd sit and you play a bunch of card games in your meantime. I learned blackjack is one of my favorite stories. As like a 9-year-old, I was learning how to count cards from my aunt. And then playing poker growing up socially. But it wasn't until Matt really introduced me to more like deck building that I played cards that didn't come straight out of Bicycle packages.
Yeah, we both really have very different experiences, especially in terms of gaming. When I was 14, I think was beta and kind of into Revise and Unlimited for Magic. I think I've talked about this before, but I played up until Ice Age, maybe a little after Ice Age. And right around that time, the Star Wars CCG by Decipher came out. Okay. And that was a big thing for me. When I started with Magic, my older brother and his friends all had played. They had started with Alpha and whatnot. They were avid into it. We had just a handful of local game shops that they visited frequently for numerous things. And when Magic came out, they were just all about it. And I recognized, even 14 or 15 years old, that they had cards, they had these collections that I could not amass because they'd been playing for so long. And so when I found out it was a flyer in, I don't know if it was Scry or Inquest, but Decipher ran a flyer for the CCG. And I jumped ship straight from Magic over to the Decipher game strictly because I could get in on the ground floor and my collection would be on par with the other people that I was playing with. And have been gaming ever since. I played that game very competitively for its entire run. Switched over to WotC's their TCG, right, that they did afterwards, and started working for WotC and Hasbro for just a little while. I was doing some strategy articles for them for a couple of their games, and took some time off and came back to the World of Warcraft card game along with the Warcraft miniatures. I was playing the Warcraft miniatures quite a lot. Then we actually, one of our first forays into gaming was we were selling Magic singles for quite a while at some of the local shops here in Austin, and did that for 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years, yeah, while you were in grad school.
Yes.
And then kind of transitioned into the Star Wars TCG. That was a really long answer, but no, we've just been gaming. I've been gaming for a very, very long time, going on way too many years.
Well, knowing all that and all that you've been through, with your experience in gaming and everything, what do you feel separates Infusion completely from all the other deck builders that have already been put out there?
My first reaction would be this concept of a hero that not only encourages but rewards you for playing a unique style. So when we play casually with our friends, I'm usually one of the oddballs out, that I don't come in with this really strong Magic background, so I don't look at the cards the same way they do. And I don't always want to play like them. I don't want to play like the boys, so I want to play my own way. But Infusion allows me to do that.
Well, but with the heroes, you probably also mean that they start with their own unique.
Yes, that's also true. That there's no real dead cards. Like, I'm pretty, occasionally with deck builders, you look at your hand and you're like, I don't want any of these cards. I'm just going to sit here till my next turn. But with Infusion, we've really done a lot to make sure that people don't draw those dead cards, that their hands, there's always something that you can play or buy.
Yeah.
Reality would lead that no matter what situation, you always have a chance of doing something.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. The concept of the hero is kind of like what she touched on. There's a couple games that do have the interaction with heroes, starting heroes, so to speak, that gives you kind of a jump off base for the beginning of the game. But we wanted to go further and include these concepts of epics. So everybody's starting with something different, not just a hero, not just different abilities and stats. We really wanted the very beginning experience to be unique. For me, it's the concept of exploits, which we cover on the Kickstarter for sure, but just the ability to interact with the opponents on your opponent's terms. A lot of deck builders don't have that option. A lot of deck builders, your interaction comes on your turns in the form of attacks, or I think Ascension has constructs that can pay off at times. But we really wanted something that was direct involvement, where you were paying attention during everybody's turns instead of just waiting for their turn to end so you could go and do your thing. Was that?
No downtime.
Yeah.
Which is a big problem for a lot of people, absolutely. So now that you've got this deck builder out, it's been out for, well, I should say the Kickstarter's been out for about 5 days, right?
Yes.
So, what is your hope and goal? What is your overall need for this particular Kickstarter?
Sure. The funding goal itself, everything is completed. The art is all bought, paid for. Everything design-wise has been tested ad nauseum at this point. We're good to go. We've got our manufacturer lined up. We've just come to Kickstarter hoping to seek the funds to bring to the Kickstarter to get the order placed so we can get on shelves, get into players' hands.
So how can, besides actually backing this game, how can people help you?
Sure, spreading the word as much as possible, social media interaction. If you're in the Texas area, coming out to some of the demos we have going on. We just got confirmation this morning that there is a convention at the end of this month that one of our local stores is going to be at, and they have asked for Infusion to be there. We'll have some more information on that later today or tomorrow once we kind of line everything up.
Texas is kind of a big place.
It is.
Yes.
It is. We're centrally located, though. We're in Austin, so if you're in Dallas or Houston or San Antonio, we're not too hard to get to.
Right. I just want to make sure you realize that Texas area is
very big.
I was born in Houston, so.
Most people don't realize how big it is until you actually get here.
Yeah, that 12-hour drive. My sister went to school in El Paso for a little while, so she would talk about making the trek all the way out there, that 12-hour drive literally from my parents' house in Houston.
So how did you guys come up with the art? I mean, where did you guys find the artists? How did you go about that process?
Well, we started off with one of the artists, I should say, is an artist we've been working with for 3 years already on other projects that we've done, more fan art for some of our other interests. And then looking not only at his style, but then where we wanted to take the game to. Like in our own minds, we had, well, we don't really want it to be cutesy and we want it to be family appropriate. So we want there to be sufficient amounts of clothing and things along those lines. But then also just talking between the two of us. And then we went to first DeviantArt to find new artists, and found artists that we liked and contacted them. That we contacted quite a few artists, and then from that process working out negotiations on people that not only had the art that we liked, but was open to commission work so that we could continue to have some continuity between some of the artwork.
It was actually like a really neat experience. Like Jenifer mentioned, we have an artist that has worked with us for the last 3 years. He is absolutely fantastic, and we wanted him to art the entire game. We wanted him to do everything, but there's 492 cards, and I believe there's a little over, I think it's 110 or 120 different art pieces. And he got back to us and said, he was more than happy to do what he could, but his scheduling just wasn't going to permit for that large of an order at the time. And then additionally, there's certain pieces that we were wanting that were just kind of out of his wheelhouse, that he just didn't think he could. I don't want to speak for him, but he strikes me as very much a perfectionist and just didn't want to be able to contribute unless it was as good as he could possibly make it. So we, like Jenifer was saying, we found some artists online that we thought had an amazing talent, and their art just, looked exactly like what we had in mind for several things. And then from there, it was just kind of a great relationship building experience with them. We actually have 6 or 7 different artists, and each of them has their own style, but they all fit the universe so well. And we've just really been blessed to find the people we've found and to work with them. we've discussed with them future projects already, and really like the interactions and connections we've had.
So the artists were pretty much on time with their artwork and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
There was a couple hiccups. Artists, they're incredibly talented people, and oftentimes you'll have either a deadline or a design idea in mind that you just can't get there on, and sometimes it's on our end, sometimes it's on their end, but every single time there was always, if any issue came up, it was always a very great kind of experience of saying, hey, I can't make this look exactly how I want to make it, and then being able to take that information and go to a different artist and say, hey, what can we do with this? And somebody else, just more than willing to jump right in and kind of take the reins.
Earlier, you made the comment, Jenifer, of finding sufficiently clothed. Right. So in that thought process, because this is something that I see a lot on social media now, is the debate about, is this appropriate? Is this not appropriate?
Mm-hmm.
Was that something based on your personal concerns about, or was that about people being offended by it?
It was honestly more personal. I don't play a lot of Magic, but we sold a lot of Magic cards, and sometimes you see the cards and you're like, well, most of this is attractive, but I really would prefer to see less of her, leave more to the imagination. Not that I'm overly easily offended or anything along those lines. It's just more, if I want to show this to my, say, mother-in-law or my friends, I don't want to sit there and be like, oh yeah, just kind of ignore the picture. I want pictures that look good, not only on the cards too, but then also on playmats. So, well,
and I think you and I had conversations too that, in pardon the language, but we wanted more of our females to be strong,
yes,
kind of badass characters rather than sex symbols. Yeah, I think that was a really, if you look at the art for Snow White, for example, she's completely covered in armor. We wanted her to be a strong, distinctive, awesome character that wasn't just supposed to be a glorified sex symbol.
So like if they popped off the page and came to life, that you wouldn't go, well, there's no way that she could run in those heels. Right. So
I think we also,
I don't know, it can be done.
We did we did there was a fun story we also shared on social media that we had sent our art for one of the characters to one of our artists, and it came back looking great. It was an excellent piece, but it had a significant amount of cleavage in the image, and we definitely wanted it to be a distinctive, family-friendly game with this, strong type of perspective instead of just a, overly sexualized character. And so we had to send back a note, that just said, we love it, but we need less cleavage. And the response back was, great, no problem, but does the breast size need to change? And we just thought that was just very, very funny in a sense of, us having, these ideas and concepts of what we wanted to look like, and both Jenifer and I and the artist all trying to get on the same page in terms of, creating this universe that is more about strong and significantly powerful women rather than, glorified sex objects.
I mean, there's a time and a place for all art. Don't get me wrong. Just that's not what we decided to do with our particular game.
It's interesting to me to figure out where people are coming from with those kinds of decisions, because some people might be afraid of backlash of this or that, and to me that is more offensive than the art itself. When people try to force their morals on somebody else, and
sure,
board games themselves are art.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if that's true, then the artist should still have full creative license over their artwork, right? So sure. It always makes me flash back to like Dungeons and Dragons, or what Harry Potter went through when people are all upset over the witchcraft stuff. I'm like, that doesn't hold water with me. It's art, right? It's supposed to be whatever the creator wants it to be versus what you want it to be. So those are always interesting topics to me, because there is room for everything, and there is a spot for everything, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like it, you don't like it. Just don't buy it. Don't watch it. Whatever. So now you've got 5 days into the Kickstarter. What
Yes.
are the stretch goals set up like so that people know what they would be investing?
Sure. So our first stretch goal actually comes at 24,000 funded. Yes, thank you. Funding level. Overall, there's 2 new epic missions and 3 recruits that we're looking at.
You said it the other way.
Yes, I flip-flopped them.
There's 3 new epic missions and 2 reinforcement recruits.
And then our final stretch goal is if we reach 100,000. Thank you. Is to actually use punch boards for our hero cards, so that right now they're the basic cardstock quality. So what your other cards feel like, and we think that if we reach that 100,000, our the people that buy our game would really enjoy to have that thicker card.
The stretch goals for us are designed in such a way to try to make Infusion as good as it can be. And we have some design restraints in terms of getting everything into the box. With the stretch goals, we wanted to be able to add some new kind of flavor into the game, so to speak, but to kind of really round out the game as the big experience that we want it to be. So 3 new epic missions would take it, if we get all the way funded. 3 new epic missions would take it up to 15 total epic missions. The 2 additional reinforcement recruits would take it up to 24 or 26. So when randomizing of 12, there's 14 that are sitting out instead of just 50% sitting out. Then the other big stretch goal that we would love to hit, the 100,000 stretch goal for the thicker cardstock, the kind of pulp board, punch board material for the hero cards, is ideal. We would love to have it so there's a thicker, more stylistic card sitting in front of you while you're playing.
What was the hardest part of this process for you developing this game, this Kickstarter?
I would say just making sure that everything was balanced. We didn't want cards that were overly powerful, but we also didn't want any cards that were what I've called before dead cards, so that they didn't have any weight. Like, you don't want any cards that every game has those, that you look at the cards and you're like, well, I really don't like this card. Everybody looks at this one card and they're like, just don't touch it. That's just taking up space on the table. So we wanted to stay away from that. That was the hardest part for me.
Yeah, the dead card issue was a big deal. We knew we wanted something on a card slot at the beginning that wasn't particularly a resource generating card, but was an interactive card. And the exploits went through several design processes to try to really get them correct. And we feel like they're in a great place right now. They add a lot of really unique interactions within the game, but those definitely took a while to really hammer down.
One of the things I always wonder about is, like, you're building a deck building game, and it seems like most decks are around 40, 45 cards or something like that, right? How do you come up with all those little ideas for each little card?
for us, for like
the
reinforcement recruits?
Huh?
Like the reinforcement recruits, or
whatever. I mean, there's 45 cards in each deck you got to come up with. That's a lot of work to think of all these different little things and all those little powers and how they all tie in together.
Sure.
Well, we started with a couple of core concepts. So like a draw mechanic, or how can we add or subtract what we call our different resources, so our skill and our loyalty, making sure that was balanced again. So I think, we created basically, like, I don't want to say a template, but we said, okay, at this level, at this cost level, we want to make sure that all the cards are kind of balanced in the same area. What are the different ways that we could make that balanced? And again, as card players, what are some of our favorite mechanics, or what are some of the mechanics we absolutely dislike? And we'll be sure to stay away from that. So a little bit of a filtering process kind of helps with some of that as well. But just trying to also just be creative, think outside the box. Wouldn't it be cool if we did this? But because of the fact that we've worked on this for so long, we didn't have to sit there and rush through everything. We've talked about this in the past. Let's see how we can fit that into our game.
How did you keep notes?
Multiple ways. We have 3 or 4 different Excel docs. We have one Word document that's basically like a Bible, is how we would refer to it. It has game notes from when we began to all the way through what the current, final iterations were.
So kind of like our brainstorming process.
We started, change logs anytime anything would change. We need
one moment.
we're on a tablet and the battery is running out. So we're gonna plug in real quick.
Your volume is in and out just a little bit, so that might be why. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is most likely the case. We've got a cord here nearby. 1 second. You got it.
I was doing a music interview the other day with one of my heroes, and he got pulled over by the cops right in the middle of the interview. So.
Oh no.
All right, we should be good there.
So now let's go back to the game a little bit in and of itself, right? So you kind of gave us the brief overview of what it's about. Tell us about the functionality of the game. How many people does it play? Is it co-op, semi-co-op? What's the in-game mechanic? Tell us a little bit about that part of it.
So the game's gone through kind of an interesting design process. It's for 2 to 4 players. First off, somebody asked me before, kind of like, what's the sweet spot? Like, where do you want to be at with number of players? We find it plays great no matter the number. 2 players is definitely a different experience than 4 players. 2 players you have a very quick game because there's just fewer of you, fewer interactions, and you're just playing very quick. Her and I can typically get through a 2-player game in 20 minutes, whereas 4-player game is going to be at least 45 minutes or so. There's a lot more interactions between the 4 individual players. The way that the exploits interact with each of the players, when you only have one other player that the exploit will interact with, it'll go by a lot quicker. When you have 4 players that the card will interact with, you're going to have to make a lot of different decisions. Do you want to target player B, target player C, target player D, that kind of thing. So it's a very unique feeling each time you play based on the number of players that you have. But, go ahead and go ahead.
In terms of the game mechanic, we have your 12 reinforcement recruits that set out, and then we have 2 basic missions, and then 3 epic missions. So players take turns buying recruits. We call it enlisting recruits out of the center of the table, the shared card pool, and then when they receive enough or build up enough of their skills, then they can run or acquire mission cards. And then the game itself actually ends when one player has either when one player has run 3 epic missions, or when the entire pile of the Odyssey missions is empty. And then you count up the reward points that are found on your mission cards and determine from that who was the winner. But it's not a co-op game or 2 versus 2. It's definitely a 1-on-1 or one. Everybody, yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to add to kind of what she said there. With a big focus for us was making sure that victory points, win conditions, were never a part of the deck. We really dislike, what we would call like dead draws, based on the fact that you're kind of stacking your deck in a certain way, or you're building your deck in a certain way. So a big design element for us was to create missions that would sit outside once completed. And we especially like the idea of how we function with the epic missions, that they provide additional game text and additional ways of interacting with your other players. We find that to be a lot of fun. So like Jenny said, every game starts with 3 random epic missions. And once one player runs an epic mission, it's immediately replaced with another random epic mission. And once somebody has run 3 total epic missions, the game will end there. And you get to add up your points that you scored thus far. And whoever has the most wins.
So now the big question. All these games coming out every year, all these new designers, all these new companies, what in the world were you thinking?
We were thinking that we love games, and I don't think you can ever have enough gaming options, personally. But we were also thinking that as plentiful as the options are, none of them fit exactly right for us. And we really wanted a deck builder that focused on personality, focused on playability, and focused on the personal experience of sitting down and playing with your friends. And none of them really opt for that. There's some really, really great deck builders out there, but none of them offer an experience where you feel like who you played and how you played really mattered.
And we're persistent as well, so we're stubborn.
It's been interesting to me to watch this grow, because as I'm watching people and talking to them and or interviewing them or whatever, they're like, there's so many games that are coming out now, it's hard to get our game out there. I'm like, this has been the music industry for over 40 years, right? There's over 1 million CDs that come out every year. You guys have maybe 4,000 games to compete with. You're starting to feel the pain a little bit, right? So, knowing that you have to cut through all the white noise of all the other games and companies marketing, how do you meet that challenge? How do you get your game out there? What is that strategy?
It's tough. Kickstarter and social media are definitely our biggest focal points to try to really get out. But we go to Gen Con every year. We were doing some kind of, I want to call them low key, but I would call them invite only kind of demos at Gen Con this year, I guess. And, we hit up local game shops on a regular basis. We love, showing off the game. We love interacting with people. I'll sit down and play Infusion anytime anybody has an interest in it.
Again, I'm very Texas sometimes in my thinking, but especially now living in Austin, there's a bunch of things that start off in Austin that are just like mom, pop, hole in the wall kind of places. And then they just become huge. There's our favorite taco place known as Torchy's Tacos that started as a trailer down in our trailer park area. That's now got stores all over the country. And I look at that and go, well, if they can go from a trailer, they can go and become nationwide. I'm pretty sure we can go from a single demo at a store to nationwide, international wide purchasing. Cool.
So everything's possible, right? Everything's possible. I always loved that question. It's like, how do you see yourself cutting through all that white noise? Because that's the $1 million question when it comes to marketing.
For me specifically, it's a lot of it is just the drive and determination to create something that is what we think, better than what else is out there, and to really get it out there and have people experience it and have fun with it.
But also expecting from ourselves to put out the best quality product that we can, not just going, well, this looks pretty good, but how can we make this better? And listening to feedback and going, okay, well, somebody didn't like this part. Well, we should listen and maybe.
Did you ever struggle with that feeling of keeping up with the Joneses, because so many games are putting out, so many games are coming out, or people putting out so many games that you felt like you were falling behind?
Yeah, it's basically feels impossible to pick a launch date for a Kickstarter campaign without launching on the same date as somebody else launching a card game Kickstarter, or a board game Kickstarter.
So it can be a little daunting when you look at some of the other names out there, especially companies that have released several big products. You're like, well, we are just the small mom and pop releasing from our trailer, but if we're good enough, then hopefully enough people will like it that we can at least get our foot in the door and go from there.
With this Kickstarter, say if the Kickstarter is successful, do you see the game going through distribution? Is that your hope outside of Kickstarter, or do you look to just kickstart your games and just go that route?
I would like us to go to distribution.
Yeah. That's if we can generate enough interest and generate a large enough player base, then yeah, definitely. We would love to be on retail shelves for sure. We love being able to deal directly with the consumer and the customer and getting feedback and giving them everything they could ever need off the Kickstarter. But at the same time, I grew up in local game shops. I spent hours upon hours of my youth. Growing up, we had, family discussions often of, I would be criticized for the amount of time I'd spend in a game shop. And it's like, well, at least I'm not, doing drugs or something, crazy, or getting involved in crime or something. So to me, a large part of distribution itself for us is being able to reach directly with the consumer, but also being able to support our local game shops and being able to get the product there as well.
And I think social media also allows us to continue to be directly involved with the consumer as well, to listen through Facebook or Twitter or Board Game Geek or some of those other venues at what they have to say and being responsive to that. So I'm I'm less concerned about us not being able to listen to the consumer and more just wanting to make sure everybody has access to the game.
So, final question. Besides Infusion, what game do you wish you designed?
Ooh. Designed as is or designed so we could help contribute to make it better?
Designed as is.
Oh, that's a tough one. I'll let you feel that first.
Oh, no, I'll let you.
Well, I won the big Predator event at Gen Con this year, so I'll go easy route and say Predator. The legendary Predator specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Clarify on that.
I'm totally blanking on the card's name. Boss Hero.
Monster.
Boss Monster, thank you. Well, it's another one of those hero concepts. But I like Boss Monster. I think it's fun, and it's got that kind of 80s vibe. I'm not necessarily a child of the 80s, but I kind of like that little kickback. But I think it's still well designed, and it's a little different.
It's a really good two-player game as well. And her and I, well before Infusion, had a lot of time being able to sit back and, well, not too well before, but being able to sit down and play quite a bit of two-player games.
So that actually does bring up one more question for me.
Sure.
Designing a game that goes good from 2 to more players.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because there's so many games that suck as 2, but they're great as 3 or 4.
That's very true. That is very, very true.
Play testing. It sounds very simple, but no, really play testing and go, okay, so what worked, what didn't, and then going from there. Having just the 2 of us, we got a lot of experience of 2-player games, but then also having a local playing group going, okay, well, what worked in the 4-person game?
We're very fortunate that there's 2 of us, and then that we also have local players as well that we trust very well, their opinion, that we can expand the game up to get them done. So, Infusion, the number of 2-player games, number of 3-player games, number of 4-player games that it's gone through is just crazy to think about. But I think Jenny's right. The main answer there is just a lot of play testing.
Taking good notes during your play testing as well.
Keeping good organized notes, probably, right?
Yes. I worked in oil and gas before this, so I became very good at taking notes.
All right, folks, there it is. So Infusion is currently on Kickstarter. There's 25 days left. What are some of the places they can find you besides Kickstarter?
Sure. We're currently on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. We will be setting up an Instagram account. And we also have a page on Board Game Geek, as well as a primary website.
Yep, and our address for both Facebook and Twitter are both the Real 808 Games. And like she said, we'll be setting up our Instagram account soon. And then the Board Game Geek is just under
Infusion.
Just under Infusion. All right. And I do have to apologize, folks. I didn't even say the name of the company at the beginning of the interview. That's my bad. So I apologize for that. I haven't done an interview in a while. So that's it. 25 days left. Infusion is on Kickstarter. Go find it. Go back it. At least spread the word about it, if nothing else. Thank you both for being on the show with me and sharing your experience, really. Your thoughts.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
We love talking about our game.
All right, everybody. David Lowry with Club Fantasci. You know where to find us, clubfantasci.com and all the social media outlets. Thank you for tuning in. Please support the project. Come on.